Hi everyone, welcome to Finding North Network, Finding My North series. My name is Zoe and I'm the Lived Experience Project Officer for Finding North Network. Today we have our wonderful guest, Phoebe Kingston, who will be telling us her story and she will be telling us a little bit about herself and her amazing journey. Before we proceed, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to the land, sea and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to the elders past and present. We acknowledge that and value the expertise of families, people and carers with lived experience of mental health condition, and we recognize and amplify marginalized voices to build an inclusive future for everyone. Um, just some um, just some virtual event etiquette. Please stay on mute so Phoebe can tell her story without any interruptions. You can please turn on or turn off your video. That's completely up to you. If you have any questions, we will have questions and answers at the end. Feel free to put it in the chat. And also please be respectful. And if you need any assistance during the time, Donna and myself are on Zoom. So feel free to send us a chat and we'll be here to support you. Just a little warning here that, sometimes when others are telling the stories, it may trigger certain parts and bring up certain memories and it might not be comfortable, but just please make sure to take care of yourself. And as always, self-care means giving yourself permission to pause. There are the lifeline and the necessary numbers if you need help as well. So they're there for you. So what I'll do now is pass on to Phoebe. Thank you so much, Phoebe.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoe. A great introduction. And I would like to acknowledge that I'm doing this today from the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people and cultures, and I pay my respect to their lands, waters, and respect to their elders, past, present, emerging, and future, and acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of the land, and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. And I love to also just recognize lived experience whenever I'm in any spaces, gatherings, meetings. There's a few of us that like to make a similar recognition to the amount of lived expertise that we own individually and in our communities and our roles and in families, and the enormous value that brings to all of those spaces. And we have a phrase of acknowledging the giants on whose shoulders we stand, so the people that have founded a lot of great reform in our movement. And then I finally also just like to recognise that sometimes we can go into some privileged spaces where we get our stories heard, or we provide views and perspectives on projects. They're very privileged tables, and there are many people of lived experience who have just as can present as amazing perspectives and have equal amount of passion and capability, but actually experience barriers and never get to some of those privileged tables. And that might be because they are incarcerated at the time, or all of the barriers we experience. So to the voices that should be heard but don't always get heard, I tip my hat to those people of lived experience as well. So we love to do all these long introductions, don't we? But they're really important and they're at the heart of, of what we do. I'm not going to introduce myself very comprehensively in terms of peer roles and things, because it just sounds like a resume, and I'm not very interested in doing that today. And I really wanted to just have that sharing space, peer connection and community, and just do a sharing. I've elected to not massively, well, to be honest, not prepare this at all in any way. Let's be transparent about that, but it was a conscious decision, because I really wanted it to be raw and upfront and very organic. I think that translates better, and it's the real me. So like raw and uncut version of me today. And I elected not to use a PowerPoint, so you're not going to see lots of slides and screens, because I get to do that in other spaces, and I can end up being a bit of a PowerPoint bitch. I'll probably don't know if that language is okay, if you want to cut that after, sorry. Yeah, so I just wanted it to be me without all the PowerPoints, and also the danger is I go off into lecture mode. So the only thing I'll say about myself before I start my story is that I do a lot of lived experience teaching as a lived experience sessional academic for clinicians, and that has all this other academic, historical, political, activist background, and I didn't want that to be this space. So for the people that do know me, that watch afterwards, they'll be aware of that anyway, and for the others that aren't, there are other spaces for that. So it's actually just me, and I don't have anything to teach. So I'm not, I don't, that's not really the space I want. I'm not interested in sort of teaching anything. I just want to share, and hopefully you'll have experience. And my last note before I start is I'm very nervous because although I'm a professional speaker and I do keynotes and lectures all the time, I haven't done this organic, this very peer sharing for probably a number of years. I'm so terrified, but trying to look good while I do it. So I'm going to launch in a moment, and the first bit won't immediately make sense, but stay with me. I'm going to take a quick drink before I start, sorry. I think this is the beginning of the end. We've seen this. Yeah, I don't know how anyone comes back from this. I don't know how she comes back from this and make her as comfortable as possible. Was the conversation that I heard, that was the conversation that I heard meters from my bed in a psychiatric clinic from two mental health nurses. It wasn't the most, that is not an inspiring thing to hear when you've found yourself in that place. It's crushing because I was this whole wonderful person inside, but I was just in this situation that was clearly being viewed very differently by other people that were there to actually hold hope and support me. So I'm going in for this storytelling style of hook, line and sinker into the crunch point of where I've ended up in a place, and then I'll just explain some wonderful background to it that also won't make sense to some but makes perfect sense in other areas. And then I'm going to probably encapsulate the storytelling aspects of the more distressing side of things, because I'd really love to spend at least 10-15 minutes or so on what I learned and where I've reflected and who I am now and what I'm doing, and actually do the storytelling of the positives and the wonderful stuff that comes from that, and the ambition and the inspiration, because we do get a lot of storytelling of distress, which is crucial, because we do need to empathize with each other. But I also think it's equally important to say what people have done with that and what's wonderful about that and what's meaningful in distress. So that's our sort of basic overview for my sharing. So clearly, from me relaying those quotes of what I've heard from my nursing team, having found myself in a psychiatric hospital, obviously lots of things have unfolded quite badly prior to the point where I find myself there, and then that's the conversation that I wake up to that morning. I had always felt, since emigrating to Australia, that there were enormous challenges to overcome, because emigrating is in itself a very stressful life event, and I think there's a list of 7 of them that are accepted as worldly, very stressful things. Actually, public speaking is one of them, so I'm doing it now. But divorce, moving house, public speaking, and what was the other thing? Emigrating, yeah. So very stressful. When I got here in 2002, I was only 23 years old, and I had to get here with, I brought my fiance with me to come and live here and start a new life with me, because my mother lived here and I was actually coming to support her with emotional breakdown and a lot of mental health services, and all very stressful, and organise my wedding and find a job, and my husband has to find a job and find somewhere to live, and that's just really stressful. And my mother was coming through really well, and I found my experience of caring for her and trying to support her very much more difficult than some of my own background, which was years previous to that. I'd come from a wonderful family and a wonderful upbringing, enormous amounts of comfort and privilege, and great parenting, great relationships. We were not struggling for money. We had our holidays every year, and I got dance classes and singing classes, and my brother was at private school, and had a wonderful mother who absolutely filled me from a young age with the "you can" attitude. You can do anything you want. In fact, there was one point at school where there was something I really wanted. I wanted to get chosen to play Sandy in Greece, because I happened to be doing a musical for the first time at school that year, and I'd finally reached the age where it was our year group that got the main parts. And being from a dancing background, singing background, I was like, this is going to be the perfect Sandy. And then we got to the point where they were going to decide between me and someone else. And I was just like, no, it's got to be me. and I thought about some things that my mother had said to me at young ages. And I only ever heard for quite a few years when I said, I want this, I want that. The response was, and I don't know if anyone listening to this has recognised this, this might be an English thing, but the response was, I want doesn't get. I want doesn't get. But actually, as I got older, she then was repositioning that to me in a way that made me, it very much confused me at first. But she said one day, what would you like to be when you grow up? And we're having this conversation. I don't think I really knew at the time. Probably just want to be a famous singer or dancer. And she said, oh, yeah, well, there's only one thing you need to do. I was like, yes, would you like to tell me the one thing that I need to do? And she said, well, you have to want it enough. You have to actually want it enough. And I sort of sloped off into my thought, well, that's a stupid response. I want to win the lottery, and I'd like to have a Rolls Royce when I'm older, but it doesn't just happen because you want things. Things don't just come when you want them. And so I went along like that for a couple of years, and then I later understood that when you really want things, you probably will do the absolute most intelligent, most appropriate things to make that happen. So when you're passionate, you'll speak to the right people, you'll take the right education, you'll study the right courses, you'll make the right relationships, you'll put yourselves in situations where you learn that you'll make things happen. And essentially that ingredient, the precursor ingredient, is that you have to really want it. And if you want it enough, you will overcome all the stuff. You'll get a degree, or you'll move to another country, or you'll do this. And if you want it, that will ultimately make it happen. So you're either going to make it happen or make an excuse. And so that was a wonderful parenting relationship to have. I never had any abuse at home, never saw any abuse. Just really healthy, happy. So many people years later have said to me, your background doesn't really because we have this stereotype that we're all from very, very crushing places, but actually you can have a wonderful early start, and something happens later that you don't move beyond very quickly, no matter how great that first point was, because no matter how great you're built inside, a trauma can still make a crack, and it does need proper healing. It did actually make me able to deal with it very well. And it put me in a great position to be able to cope and come through. But I was traumatized in the same way as people, feel a sense of trauma. So we're a bit like eggs. If we suffer really bad things, sort of up to about 7 years old, we become it's really hard sort of regulate that. So by 7, because I had all the good stuff coming in, I was hard boiled. So I had my sense of self-worth, my sense of self-esteem. I knew how I wanted to be treated. I knew what to expect. I knew my worth. Whereas I think when there's, well, the evidence is that people are traumatized very young, they model from what's happened, what they see, and the sense of self-worth and how they should be treated isn't there, and that just has a lot of ongoing problems. So I was very fortunate of a wonderful background in almost every way, but I did experience a real trauma. I coped very well, but clearly it's caused major problems. I suppose content warnings are those things that we do all the time out of respect. So there's going to be no graphic details or anything. It's just like the sentence. You go, oh, that's what happened, and then I move on. But you can't just skate around certain things. So if anyone watching and recording, obviously just pause, literally pause your recording, or you take care of yourself. And I just also wanted to say, before I launch into this little bit of background, before I move on with the story, I always, well, usually, I do get teary. So I just want to let you know that I'm always okay, because I actually do this almost every fortnight because it's my job. But I'm very much healed. It's just that the memory is emotional. So when I remember it, even from a healed perspective, it's just very sad. It's very, oh, that was really sad. And then, moments later, I'm off doing my nails, and I'm not even, it's not a thing. So I just want to make sure that you all feel comfortable. Don't feel distressed for me if I'm crying. Or I'm not going to boo, but like it'd be watery eyes. So as a confident young girl, I developed lots of relationships with lots of older teenagers when I was only 14. So hanging around with lots of older boys, young men, older girls, seeing lots of things that I shouldn't, not getting involved in too much that I shouldn't, but it was all around me, and I just wanted to be cool, because I was actually being bullied at school as well, and that was there. And so when I went out with my friends, I was like, I'll just, I'm going to be this person, I'm really cool. It's not cool because you don't have any emotional intelligence at that age to really appreciate the situations that you're in, and how risky some of those situations are, and what that will feel like later, because at 14 you're bulletproof and there's no real forethought. I found myself at a party at 14 years old and looking forward to meeting a young man I've been friends with from childhood, and the saddest thing was that I'd actually been warned away from that. So I already had certain information, but again, at 14, nothing, nothing usually warns you off certain things that you just want to do, and that's sad. I was raped at the party, in an upstairs bedroom for a certain amount of time, and having managed to have escaped that situation and being carried out of a house, and just mayhem in the house. I don't know. We don't have mobile phones, so I don't know if someone's on the house phone. I just want to go home to my own home, and I have guys running around. There's people screaming, and it's just a very unthought of situation, because some things just unfold really quickly, and you find yourself you don't understand, and all you know is what you want. And I've just begged, I just want to go home, have a shower, and this hasn't happened. It's not I just I just can't accept that anything's happened. I don't seek any justice through police. Of course, I don't even tell my parents, because they're actually the last people that I want to know. And that is not because I think I'll be in trouble. I'm not ashamed, because I'm a hard-boiled egg with my good worth. So I had a very unusual response in that respect to what has happened to me, because I don't feel ashamed, and I know it's not my fault. Well, I don't have any issues on that front, but I'm absolutely shattered inside, and I don't really know where to go with that. And at 14, my best response at the time was just to shut that down and carry on, and to carry on with my life, and to do what I'm doing and be successful, because I think that's my get back. and having had a father who'd been through the court system for certain things and still not got justice, I had a very cynical view, and I certainly didn't want to go through being questioned in court. You know, when we put the victim on trial, and then when there's not enough evidence, and then there is no justice, I've lost again, and I'll lose twice, and I won't come back from that. So I think that my best chance of coming back from things is to actually just go, you've got no effect on me. You're not even a thing. You're not even a thing in my life. And then deal with what I need to inside. So those teenage years just became more and more challenging and uncomfortable because I've completely disorganized everything inside myself and I don't know how to put it back together. I've been bullied at school as well because I'm little, I'm only 5 foot, and I was smart and I was popular with my own friends, and the boys like me, so I'm the absolute target for the tough girls. And then eventually I'm thrown out of school because I decided to beat one of them up. So I'm now doing things that are just aggressive. I don't know at the time that's PTSD. I didn't realise that my aggression was part of my struggle, and neither does anybody else. So that goes completely unnoticed, and there's no help. And my parents don't know. So I'm actually still just on my own at 16, waiting to go to college, thinking, why is life this feels really, really hard. It's like when you try and walk through sand and mud and your boots stick, and I can see the other side, but which is enormously difficult. All my relationships were quite difficult, and I gave up dancing at one point. I really, really, really struggled. So that was how I sort of came into to college to do some academic subjects and also dancing as well. And I never stopped to think about all these situations I'm still getting in. I had a boyfriend that actually it turned out to be a con man that the New Scotland Yard were investigating. And when I moved in with a friend after another incident where I couldn't then live with one of my parents due to the partner relationship, I trusted someone, lost some of my inheritance, and then that person who had previously been living with the friend that I've moved in, they raided, yeah, and the police raided that guy's house, and I'm in trouble. I was forever having my car pulled over and taken apart by the side of the road. I myself had never used drugs, but everyone around me did, so I was just lumped into that group, and I just became very, very hardened, and everything just became impenetrable. But inside, just made a marshmallow, and I'm just sort of slowly cooking, and it'll just ooze off the stick eventually. Like I literally would just fall off the stick. But at least because I'm oozing and it's sticky stuff, I'll hang on as long as I can. That analogy just came just then. It's rather a silly one, but there it is. It just came out. That's what happens when you don't prep. So I then meet a wonderful man, so I'm going to zoom to how I've ended up in the psychiatric clinic, because nobody's known anything that's happened. Nobody is. I felt that moving away from England and moving to the other side of the world would be a great way to leave my baggage behind and just start again and be the person that I was trying to be. Because even at 23, um, I thought maybe that's possible, and we'll do that. And I'd like to go and take care of my mum, and I'll on the plane literally just try and visualize everything, like everything will be great now. I'm gonna make this great life. I'm gonna, even though my future husband and fiance is coming with me, and I'm tearing him away from all of his family and friends. There's no family and friends for him in Australia. There's my mum, which he's only met twice. We've been together about 4.5 years. And I have my mum, but I'm taking him away from everything. So I'm going to show this man who's going to have this wonderful life in Australia, this land of opportunity. I might restudy, we'll build a new life, and I'm using anything left in my tank to build something new. So we we arrive here, and yes, I didn't realise that the immigration is really stressful. I didn't even understand some of the slang, the language, the health services. On the plane, I was just thinking, it's an English-speaking country. It's a Commonwealth country. It's like it's basically exactly the same as England, but with sun. And I love sunbathing. So I thought I was just coming to another version of England with different accents, but everything was quite easy. And I got a real shock when I got here because I actually didn't understand the culture, and it is not similar to English culture at all. etiquettes, the way that we make friendships, businesses, lifestyle, the way things are done. I really didn't know what was going on. So I didn't have any friends for a year. It was just my husband and I looking after my mum and trying to get ourselves organised with houses and immigration visas and cars, and then looking after my mum a little bit until she got better. And so what happened was, when my mum came through her experiences very well, I then realised that had sucked the last bit I had left in the tank to build a new life. And I've only touched on a few things that have happened up till that 23 years, because you can't do everything even in an hour. But there were just things that you can't sweep under a carpet with no healing. Um, I tried, so I enrolled at college and thought, I'll go be a doctor. I don't know who just decides I'll just be a doctor. I just like picked the thing that would look very successful. And in fact, I loved the human body. I did very well at biology school, and I've always loved the human body. And I had been working in as a radiology assistant, so I was in medical imaging, and I actually used to work in an operating theatre back in England. So it was my primary interest, because I'd let go of all the dancing and singing thing, realizing at that point that was probably quite a superficial way to fill holes. So I was working with a doctor, and he said, "Oh yeah, you should do that." So I just enrolled at college, and I spent 2 years studying enormously, and I was getting very good grades. But I think what a lot of my friends weren't realizing was that I was up all night doing that. That didn't come naturally. I wasn't a naturally very academic person. I'm confused by chemistry. I don't I don't understand where molecules go and why they and how they join, empirical formula and all that stuff. It was a real struggle. So, but I do have a very good memory. So I just memorized the ways to do things, and I played them on a dictaphone of how to answer questions. I wrote all my English literature essays, played them on dictaphone. So when I went in to answer the question that we told we were going to be answering in an hour's exam to write an essay, I wrote exactly what I've been rehearsing for 2 weeks before. That's not a very clever way to get through. It's a very long-winded way to get through college and get averages of 90% to 100% on everything. People are like, "Oh, it just must come so easily to you," and I'm like, oh, not at all. But I was a bit of ashamed of how hard I had to work to get those grades, because some people actually just get those grades because they are that smart, and it just comes really naturally. And I was very jealous of that, so I just had to do the best. And you have to get over 96th percentile in TER back then to get into med school. And I did it. I got all the grades, and I was valedictorian of the college. And I did another year working and prepping on medicine school, an entrance exam, which is not really psychometric. It's a little bit of that and something else. It's designed by Mensa, and it's designed to cut out 95% of applicants. So it's not just your average, not an IQ test, not just psychometric. It's a bit of that, but it's a speed stress test. So even if you were very good at those and could get them done within a certain time, you actually only get about 20 seconds per question. So once you get to the end of that section, you can't just keep going and then go back to another section in the exam. They'll take the section, so it's more how quickly you can think. Now, I'm very, very stressed by this point, because I've studied for 3 years. I've attained the TER. I have done a year practicing on that prep test, and all those results coming back, you're in the top 5%, like you're probably going to get interviewed. And I always come over really well face to face. So I'm actually certain that I'm going to start med school in 2008. February 2008. I'm going to UW Med School, and I'm focused on my personal vision, and I'm absolutely sure this is happening. And all of my friends are like, "Oh, she's done it! She's done it! She's nearly there. She just needs panel interview." And that's not what happened, because I'm clearly going through a very manic, and I don't really like clinical terminology, but I do like the word manic, because I basically was a maniac. Had been working, studying, working 15 hours a day for 2.5 years. I got up at 4 a.m. in the morning to start a 5 a.m. job cleaning toilets. I'm in the library by 9. I do an hour there. I'd have a full timetable. I do another hour in the library. I get home. I do that. I have dinner. I would study till 9 o'clock, fall asleep, and then get up at 4 and start again. And I did this for 18 months. Plus, on the third year where I was not at college, I was working full time and then was exercising I just had so much energy, and I'd never done running before, but I ran for an hour and a quarter, 12 k's a day, 1,500 stomach punches, and I probably didn't realise at the time, but ultimately after a few weeks I did, that I'd actually dropped down to about 39 kilos. So I was really, really tiny, but full of energy. And I and everyone around me just assumed I was just a massive overachiever. I'm just really fit, physically fit. I'm mentally fit, getting ready for med school. I'm just working, practicing on my exams. It's all happening. And I just run myself into a, a ditch. You can only go up so high. I've been on a manic for 2 years. It's just not sustainable to live like that, no matter how much effort, no matter how you're getting all the grades. I'm just overachieving on everything. I finally realise I am smart. I can do what I want. Mum's right. I can do what I want, and I'm going to show my husband and my mum I've come here and we're setting up a life. And then I just experienced 2 weeks of not being able to really remember where I was going. I drive somewhere and I don't really remember how I get there. I don't sleep as well. I've stopped eating a bit. I have these funny feelings in my hands that I'm not completely convinced that I'm controlling my hands. This is a very common symptom if you have a clinical background. It's a clinical clinically understood as that's a symptom of what they call schizophrenia, and I had that very robotic senses. I began walking funny with my hand like that. I still don't know why I specifically curl them like that, but I was actually starting to look physically, it's a derogatory to myself, but like a zombie. It was clear that there was nobody visibly home. I'm still in there, but I'm just walking around not, and I'm not hearing voices, but there are noises, and I see things that I'm aware aren't probably there, or I see them differently. So when TV screens change shape, or when I'm walking and I think I'm walking on a slant and I tip my body to compensate, my husband's like, "What are you doing?" Well, I can't answer because I don't know what I'm doing, because I'm stuck. I must have visibly looked terrible. So this was about sort of 10 days, and then I eventually lost it, and I decided it's probably better if I'm perhaps end my life, because I've dragged this man through immense difficulty. He's left everything to come here. He's had to take care of a very distressed mother-in-law that he doesn't really know, and we've gone through all of that. We don't have these great jobs. It's not going the way that I promised it was going to go. And now I'm the strongest person. I'm a strong woman, and now I'm breaking down, and it's clear that there's something very wrong. But within a sort of a 10 days or so, and there's other stress, you don't always just make an appointment with the GP and go. I'm not someone that's very easily convinced to go somewhere. I can hear what people are saying to me, but I just actually couldn't even make any decisions. I can't even explain even now where I was living, but I don't actually know where I was. I still don't know where I was, and so I drove off in the night, and I thought, I'll drown myself, and or I'll write a note, and I can't do this to this man, and that'll be good because he'll go back to his family, probably where he belongs. And then I felt bad about my mum. So obviously I didn't, because I'm here now presenting on Finding North Network. And my husband did take me to a GP the next morning. So, a long story short, I've ended up actually in a private clinic that I didn't have funding for. So, I ended up transferred and found myself in a hospital over here in WA called Greylands, which is a sort of notorious for certain things. It is a massive hospital, and it's very clinical, and it's a little bit in the past, and it's not the most comfortable place to be. It's a very challenging environment to find yourself in, and eventually private psychiatrists came in and advocated to get me out and get me on a priority transfer to a private facility that had two government subsidised beds, so two public beds, but they were in a very small private facility, and I got on a priority transfer. So after about 8 days at Greylands, I got to that private clinic. So we had a couple of years of to be honest, not much going on. I took the meds, I spoke to a psychiatrist, I did some groups. I just wandered around through a life that I didn't recognise. And then one day I had been working for 5 months, just a menial job in, service job. I really enjoyed customer service, making sandwich, essentially in a sandwich bar. And I never made it home after my shift. So I was gone for a couple of days, and overnight. And I had my head shaved. And I'm slightly running. I'm just looking at the clock here because I only have probably about 5 or 10 minutes to sort of wrap this bit up. And I haven't done any of the positive stuff yet, so obviously this is why, this is definitely organic, isn't it? But perhaps it's good just to do a bit of sharing on what the distress has been, and we can do lots of inspirational stuff if we get a Q&A, or I can just carry on and do that bit after the next 5 minutes. But I've ended up in this psychiatric clinic on this occasion. So I've already been using services for 3 years. There hasn't been any movement, there hasn't been any real recovery, there hasn't been any meaning making, there hasn't been great jobs. I didn't go back and apply back for medical school. It was just, I just kind of plodding along. And they were like, yeah, she's recovering, she's doing well. And I'm inside thinking, this is a compromised life. This wasn't the ambition that I'm not sure any of you know who I don't think that anyone saw me for the amount of potential that I wanted to use. So lost a few years of my life just doing what I was told. I believed I was very, very sick and mental illness. I thought that the pills would just fix things because it's all this chemical thing, and I had this faith and trust in people to fix my problems. Well, that sounds really stupid when I say that now, but I really did. I just wanted people to fix it. No one ever asked me what happened to me, by the way, which is straight. No one ever asked me what I wanted out of my life, so I'm not sure how we're doing person-centered recovery. When no one at any point in actually 9 years of that journey, when no one actually asked me what it was that I was aiming for. So again, back then I didn't even think of that either. Not because I'm stupid, just because I'm so challenged. You just get stuck in this thing, and you just don't realise things till later. So I've gone missing from home for goodness knows what reason, because I'm clearly not healed and I'm not fixed and I'm not happy, and so all the functioning just disappears away again. Just the thing about risk assessments, I could have been risk assessed at 9 o'clock that morning and would come up fine, and by 5 o'clock I'm gone. The next day I'm wandering around shopping centres in a delusion. So I actually thought that the Department of Immigration and armed rogue agents out after me that had gone rogue and that were going to shoot me. So when you think there are armed federal officers coming to shoot you, don't go home to your husband. I'm a very protective person. That's my my man. I've been with him since I was 19. We'd been together for a number of years, and we got married. I'm trying to protect him, so I think I've got to do all this on my own. So I just go missing. I remember certain parts of it, and that was at the first point that I heard voices. I'd had diagnoses of all sorts of things before that, including schizophrenia, bipolar, schizoaffective disorder, PTSD, eating problems, stress, anxiety. None of that really meant anything to me. There was obviously issues and problems emotionally. But the first point I hear voices, that's very, very frightening, because all I can hear is, get around the next corner quickly. There could be one behind, and you've probably got half an hour left of your life. You better, where are you going? Do this. And at the same time, there's another voice, which is that really annoying commentary, like, she is picking her nose. She's walking very fast. She's going past the shop. You're flicking your hair. And stop moving your finger with your ring. Leave your finger ring. You need to be vigilant. And then the other voice coming in, you need to walk faster now. I'm in the absolute battle of my life, because I'm convinced that it is the last day of my life. I'm actually going to die, and all I want to do is call my husband and just say, I love you. So I'm like the most alone person. I feel the most alone person in the world, because there isn't. I have wonderful people in my life and relationships, but because of wanting to protect them, I wouldn't call a single one. I think my phone's tapped. So I'm completely alone in the world. I just want my husband. And he found me on a beach. A day later, just found me in the car on the beach, no hair. So I wake up the next morning and look in the mirror. And not only do I not recognise myself psychologically, like I don't recognise this wonderful, empowered young girl that was going to do everything and change the world. I just look at this bald, and when I say shaved, I mean to the scalp, like it's almost scalped. Because I had a hairdresser do it because I thought that I actually thought that the panels that you walk past when you come out of shops were picking up signals from my hair. They were coming, the beam signals down to Department of Immigration. None of this, I actually know where all this comes from now, but that took years. I'm fully in and in this reality. It's real. That's what's happening. I'm finding myself running around the place waiting to get shot on my own. So I had my head shaved in any attempt to escape being detected. And so when my husband found me, that is tragic for him. To find your wife, the teenager that you've grown up with, sitting in a car with no hair, and I didn't even have a response, really. I was just like, yeah, so bombed with meds in the clinic, and then of course I gained lots of weight. So when I come out, I'm very dumpy. I'm still bald. I don't have any self-identity left, so there isn't anything to recognise. There wasn't a life to put back together. It was just, and then they thought that because they could just discharge me quickly, because normally I bounce back quick, that's a good idea, and that will fix it. And I went to a job interview on the Monday, and then left thinking I'm maybe not ready for that. So then spent another couple of years going, how did doctors think that was okay to pass me through in 2 weeks when I've just devastated my life? I've devastated my husband. I've devastated my mum. They've been up for 3 nights driving around thinking I'm going to find Phoebe in a ditch somewhere, potentially. I'm a very sensitive person, so to put someone I love through that is very traumatizing. And yet no one offered any of you that has this been upsetting for you. So just get rid of the voices, you'll be fine. Well, I'm not sure I'm not sure that's why there's the approach that we take, because the problem wasn't the voices. The voices have never been a problem. And in fact, after that, I never had them again for 6 years. I don't have a problem with voices. I've obviously got a problem somewhere else that make that happen. Yeah, so look, that was the that was the entire background. I did manage to get myself through that. Later, I was just coming through that on the way to get a job at a laundromat, thinking I'll just start with a simple job and I'll go from there. And I had a car crash on the way with my husband and ended up in a neck brace, and I had whiplash for 9 months, and I had 24 months of trauma therapy and 3 days of group therapy, and I was institutionalized for 2 months. I basically in and out just lived in psychiatric clinic. So I was almost there, and then I lost another 2 years. So that's like a sort of a 10-year story of how I was being treated, but nothing got any better, nothing evolved, and so I left services, and I just decided to do things my own way, which is a risk. But I'm the sort of person where I trusted myself to get an education. I don't just mean like academic, I mean to learn and to self-reflect and write a vision statement and power statements and what I'm going to do with my life. What are my values? How am I going to live by them? Not compromise them? Why are they important? Pick mentors, idols. Who do I respect and admire that are, idols could be like famous people you never met, or you've read their biography and you're like, oh, I idolize this person. But I needed actual mentors in my real life, aside from friends and family, maybe, peer workers, or just anyone that I could actually engage with that real mentoring. Even if that's not what we're calling it, I wanted to learn, because I clearly wasn't being offered or supported to do that in clinical services. There's no space where that happens. They do a psychoeducation thing at you. I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to find my identity, keep the bits that I really liked, that had always got me through, reflect on bits that weren't as helpful, and understand them, accept them, ditch them if I could, but learn to channel them the right way, and encompass all of that in my new self, still with the core of who I am. And I decided to be a peer worker. And I thought, and I don't want other people that was like 9 years of my life, sort of just going around in circles. Just think, I know what I've achieved in the 5 years since, it's been like 7 years. Oh, I'll probably do this maybe in a different session another day, because I've totally not left any room for the inspiring stuff. But actually what I've achieved in the last 7 years, in my wildest dreams, if somebody said to me, oh, if you're going to do this, and you're going to be a contributor, and I'd have gone, oh, that's a bit much. But when I decided that I wanted to do that, or I did it. And I knew I was going to do it. And I always knew that I was going to do it once I decided to do it. And I'm a bit bitter that the number of years I spent not doing anything, what I could have accomplished in those years, because I'm 43 nearly now, and I I feel a bit ripped for what I could have contributed and offered and shared in the space to help other people feel supported, which is so rewarding. And I could have been doing that since perhaps, maybe 10 years ago, or sorry, 14, 15 years ago. So yes, there's that little bitter taste. But I love being a peer worker, and I love my career, job, vocation, sharing, calling. I use different words on different days. I love who I am. I love my work because I don't really see it as work because I love doing it. I love peer work, but for me it's almost like not work because it's my life and I live it and I love it and I eat it and breathe it and do it. And maybe that is exactly what was always supposed to happen. And maybe all of my skills and compassion and my empathy and my sensitivity and my fury and frustration and non-acceptance of certain things is exactly the heart of the lion that I need to be, to feel worthy to contribute to the work that the great people are doing, and surround myself with those people and work for those people, work with them, and have those people as colleagues, and to get involved in the ground on the community still. I'm doing a lot of stuff at the moment where I want to get back to actually doing support groups and facilitating in those peer roles. So next year we'll be going back to that. I've given up some of my governance work to actually go back to that peer-peer connection, so that retains my currency of really remembering what is on the ground and actually being with those people as well, because I do other executive stuff, but that can get quite dry and frustrating. Executive levels of mental health sector, so I spread myself around, and people say, oh, you're a workaholic, you do this, but I'm just passionate. And I think that it's very easy to sometimes say to people, well, you're going to burn out, you have to stop, you've got no balance, da, 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 da. But I have read some spiritual articles that say that sometimes that's actually a fact, that person is actually okay. I'll get exhausted, and sometimes I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I've had a brilliant idea and I've got to quickly type it out, and do some things, and I'm a bit knackered the next day, and that's not very sensible, and I wouldn't advise people do that. But I'm a certain type of person and character where that just drives me. I can drive for ages when I'm exhausted in life doing that stuff, and it just makes me so happy. I'm okay with being exhausted and emotionally burnt out sometimes, because I will eventually, it'll be like a forced stop. I just won't be able to get out of bed one day. I wouldn't advocate that other people do this, but it actually works for me in a weird way. I've never run into massive problems. I do get exhausted and a little bit burnt out, but in my mind, I'm gloriously happy with what I'm doing, and I'm enormously rewarded. So I don't mind being a bit exhausted and burnt out sometimes, because I feel alive and I feel it's worth it, and because I might have limited time, and people who are still using services and still in some of that journey right now deserve, I think, that if people like me can do things, anything, and this doesn't make it true, but I feel obligated, I want to be a peer worker. Um, I think I've used up all my time. Do you know what? I probably might. Maybe I should do another session on peer work and all the things you can do and achieve, because I totally plan to do that, and I've just ranted on and done a lot of doom and gloom. So I apologise that might be a little bit messy, but it was raw and real, Zoe. I can see you nodding your head, Shay. It's fine. That was just like 45 minutes of Phoebe.
Thank you very much, Phoebe.
Do you have questions?
Yes, I do, but I'm going to stop recording because I might cry as well. But thank you so much, Phoebe. So I just want to say thank you so much, Phoebe. And for our next session, we do have Laura Lewis coming in on the 15th of December. If anyone wants to join, the event will be on Finding North Network, and we'll be sending you some links. So thank you again, Phoebe. It's so good having you.
No, thank you for having me. That was wonderful.